Hey moms of Northwoods and any other moms tuning in. My name is Ashley Gleason and I could not be more excited to be here with these three incredible women today. You guys are in for such a treat, but before I introduce you to them, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we have in mind for our day. We certainly hope to leave you equipped with some new thoughts and ideas as moms. This mom's journey is hard, and so it always helps to hear from other moms. But more than that, we just want to leave you feeling energized, excited, and with just this renewed passion to do the hard work that it takes to be a mom, knowing that it really does pay off. And so as we sat around today, just deciding kind of where we felt like God really wanted to take the morning for us, we felt like God was just directing us to take our attention today to just taking the focus of our parenting back to the relationship with our kids. It's so easy for me as a mom to let my focus be the outcome, raising smart children or well-behaved children or children who do X, Y, or Z, when in reality, if I can make my focus just right on building that relationship with my children, it's so much more effective. And so we just want to talk about that today. And the awesome thing, as I introduce you three, oh my gosh, you're going to learn, we kind of have each season of life represented between the four of us. And so building a relationship with your kid is something that changes. And we just want to equip you, those of you at each of those different stages as we go. And so here on my right, I would love to introduce you to Miss Bobby Bucknam. And Bobby is a grandma to three adorable little boys, rambunctious, but adorable little boys, and a mom to three awesome daughters. And so I love what she has to share. Bobby's so passionate about raising littles. And so you're in for a treat as she kind of talks us through that stage. And then Alicia Matheson, superhero over here. She is raising four kids ranging in age between 6 and 16, all while homeschooling moms. And so talk about someone with some perspective of how to really focus in on the relationship with their kids. And then the awesome Kim Bankert. And Kim is going to, I love Kim because she comes at this from so many different angles, and you'll hear more about her story, but Kim can really relate to those of you who are navigating being a mom as a single parent. And not only that, but for some of you navigating this journey through different traumas as a family or traumas that your kids go through. So I'm so excited for you guys to hear what they have to say today. And I'm just gonna go ahead and toss it right off with Bobby and let you just kick us off, talking about what it looks like when our kids are little. How on earth do we focus on building a relationship with them when we got these things running all around and we can't even figure out what's for dinner, much less how to have a relationship.
How on earth do we do that, women? Right?
Oh, right.
So you know what, I'm gonna throw it right back to you guys and ask you a question. Okay, think back when your kids were littles and think, okay, just give me one or two words of what would describe your life at that point.
Chaos.
Chaos?
I was gonna say chaos.
Huh?
Chaos
A second, chaos.
Yeah,
okay.
definitely.
I think I would have to go with like non-stop.
Non-stop.
Like just,
yeah, that's
it's
good.
never a break.
Yeah.
From the time you wake up in the morning until they get in bed at night. It feels
Yes,
like you're...
that glorious moment when they go to bed.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's very physically demanding,
Yes.
right? You're just going all the time, making lots of decisions throughout the day. But basically when our kids are littles, if we're looking at the relationship, it's a lot about building that foundation in our home, right?
Yeah.
You're teaching them, how is our family gonna function? What rules are we gonna go by? How are you allowed to talk to me? How are you not allowed to talk to me? All that stuff. And the thing I remember is the endless repetition. Do you remember that?
Oh,
Thinking,
gosh,
are they
yes.
ever gonna learn to say thank you? Like, it just seems like, anyway.
Are they ever gonna learn to say anything but mommy, 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 right?
Yeah,
like it is.
too. Yes.
It's just so demanding.
Yes.
But yeah.
And
that
so
repetition.
the encouragement that I wanna remember, because I'm obviously past that, made it through a few. And when I think back, I go, it was worth it. It was worth it. Investing and doing all that training, because that's really what it is at that stage. It's a lot of training, right? Of these little things that over and over and over and over that you do. But the thing that creates safety, which is what we're looking for, I think, in our kids, right? We all want them to feel safe and create a safe environment for them, is having consistency. And we call that in our house the C word, especially when they were little, because it's so hard.
It's so exhausting.
To be consistent, isn't it?
It really is.
But they, there's basically a couple things you want them to come away with at that stage of life. You want them to know how to be responsible, and you want them to be respectful. So being responsible is learning how to function in life, appropriately as a kid, and then how to be respectful to the people around you. Because really, the way, somebody told me this and it kind of went in deep. The way that my kids respond to me is the same way they're going to respond to their teacher, to the policeman, to their future boss, to any authority figure in their life, right? So sometimes when you see these parents and their kids are like slapping them in the face, I'm like horrified, like mayday, mayday. Yeah. But I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
I've had the slap. If you had the slap to the face, it happened once in our house.
But it stopped to that.
Yeah, like but it's that consistency, right, of just over and over. And I think that, picture this, okay? You're laying on the couch at the end of the day, and your little toddler is misbehaving. The last thing you feel like doing, right, is getting up and dealing with it. So you yell at them from the couch. Johnny, time to put your toys away. It's, bedtime. And there's no understanding of that anything was said in the room at all, right? It just like continues on. Yes. So the second time you raise your voice a little bit to give a little more oomph, and then Johnny, I said to put your toys away. It's bedtime. So you sound a little more authoritative, right? Does anything happen with Johnny? No, no, probably not. He just sits there because he knows there's one more time
but
before
Mom. It's so
Mom.
much easier to just sit on the couch. Right? But that's the challenge.
It is.
It's just so hard.
Yes.
It so pays off.
So then
right?
that third time, you're like, Johnny, get off! I told you how many times do I have to tell? Been there, done that, right? It's terrible, and you feel terrible as a parent. So it's learning to have that consistency to get that first time obedience. The same rules are the same no matter if you're at our house or our neighbor's house or at church or at Walmart. They know they can't get away with that stuff, Sure. So if you're in the little stage, none of you really, you still have sort of littles,
yes.
But some of you have littles. And that's the hardest part, I think, is that stage where you're just having to be so constant all the time. But I promise, it pays off. It pays off as they go.
And I think the challenge is that when they're little, we're talking about building that relationship with them, that it doesn't always feel loving, right? Like it just feels like you're constantly telling them no, or that you're having to redirect them, or that, but the reality is that's how you create that foundation, right? With them to build that safety.
It is.
And so being told no in this amazing way is really creating that safety and just so important.
And the friendship that we all want with our kids will develop over time.
Yes.
Like I'm in that stage now, right? I've got friendship with my kids, but they're all out of the house. Mm-hmm. Maybe that has something to do with it. But there's, when they're little, you're creating a foundation for friendship when they know the proper boundaries and who's in charge. Having someone in charge makes them feel safe, right?
Yeah, no, it really does.
Yeah.
It really does, and it's just so important.
Yeah.
I know I've heard you say this before, and I love it, that as we talk about getting that response, that if we can even be consistent in how we deliver our commands and what comes back. And so just talk to them a little bit about that, because I think that's something that, just making the eye contact, getting at their level.
I call that
it's
just
so
like
important.
giving a good command.
Yes.
Because I think it's so easy to parent on the fly. It's like, put your shoes away, or go get your stuff ready for school, or whatever. And we don't even know if they heard us, really, And so we tried this at our house, and it actually worked really well. Once I learned how to give a good command, I didn't even know there was such a thing. But instead of just like throwing the words out there or up the stairs or whatever, you get the kids' eye contact, right? So, John, I'll just pick on Johnny today. Hopefully no one has a Johnny. But, Johnny, you need to put your shoes away. Instead of just saying that, I go, Johnny, can you look at Mommy? I get the eye contact. So this is about a relationship. We need to see each other, connect. And then I see him looking at me, so he can't say I didn't look. And then I say, okay, it's time to put your shoes away. You need to do that now. And then I need a response from Johnny. I need him to say, okay, Mom. And if he doesn't say that, then that's where we start. What do you say to Mom? You say, okay, Mom, so I know you heard me. And I love the South, right? Yes, ma'am. I always wanted
Yes, ma'am.
It wouldn't work in our house, but you can do that too. And then if he doesn't obey, then you know he heard you. He can't say, I didn't hear you, I didn't respond. It's on him, right?
Yeah.
And then if he doesn't respond, we use this thing in our house where I would just say, that's two. I've already said it once. If I'm saying it again, they knew, and I'd explain this to them, that's two. If you don't obey this time, there's going to be a consequence. So they would get a timeout. They would lose, if we're in a, some kind of reward system, they would lose that. And then there's something concrete that happens. So if you're doing that all day long with your kids, you start to create a pattern where they know when Mom says something, she means it, and you better do it. And then you have far fewer
so good
incidences, right?
So good.
And I think what's so good about that is that if you're developing that in a time where it's not chaotic or stressful, so that when you are in a period of, we have to leave the house right now.
Yes.
Like they already know that.
Yes.
I had somebody tell me once, like kids can't learn how to obey if you're always in a time of stress.
Oh, that's so
Like
good.
you're always
That's
stressful
so
when you're
good.
trying to get out of the house and
So true.
everything feels frantic. So I think taking
So
the time
true.
to develop that throughout the day.
Yeah, and in the frantic state, we're not a good parent either.
Right.
Right? We're not feeling like being patient and teaching them. We just want them in the car.
Hypothetically, I'm not frantic.
Well, and it gets back to that, like, I love the eye contact and the response because it is so relationship building. Like, you're not just giving the command and getting eye contact because you're sick and tired of them not listening, right? It's just teaching them you're worth stopping long enough to have a conversation with you, be it go put your shoes on or how was school today, right? Just establishing that at a young age. But I have to say, in like full transparency, what I would have given to have had someone be able to tell me these things, right, when my kids were little. And so what's your advice, for those of us a little beyond that stage, right? I know you said it's never too late, but
it's never too late. And I mean, truth be told, it's a little bit harder, right? As your kids get older, if you haven't taught them these things, then there's a pattern that has to be a bit dislodged and retaught. So it's a little bit more of a struggle, but it can be done. It just takes intentionality. But, we failed so many times. I will speak for myself. I failed so many times with, losing my temper or saying something I shouldn't. But failure can be turned into an opportunity. I love that. Because your kids, our kids, they're going to fail in life. So when we fail, we're actually modeling for them. What do you do when you fail? If I scream at my kid, then I need to go back and say, oh, Ashley, I'm really sorry. Mommy shouldn't have lost her temper. That was wrong. What are you teaching them? Humility, how to give a good apology, that you're not perfect, so you're not expecting them to be perfect. So many good lessons, right? So don't despair when we mess up. That's easy to say, but hard to live
it's been, I put it to the test with my 12-year-old ADHD son. There's a lot of ADHD in the Gleason house, so there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of time. But it's just getting him at that stage to give me eye contact. I'm like, bud, let's make an agreement. When you speak, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and try and really listen to you or tell you I can't right now. And then when I do it, you do the same. And is a perfect no. But in just a few weeks' time, putting our shoes on is a little bit not so spaced out. I don't even know that for him it's always disrespect. Sometimes it was. But even so, I'm still escalating. And so it's so true. And I just love that. But
just one little disclaimer, because there are some kids they're on some sort of spectrum. They can't look you in the eye. So if you've got a kid like that, be gracious, right? Teach them another way to focus. Like they can look at the floor in front of me or something.
Something to show that they've got your attention. No, that's really good. That's really good. Well, I love that. And for those of you in this season of life, raising littles, ranging from age 2 to 10, you are in luck because Bobby has agreed to do a one-day class, and the information for that is on your pamphlet that goes with today's message. But if you can't find it there, you can also find it online. But I highly encourage all of you to sign up for that class. Just some really, really good practical steps to take as you're raising those little kids. So take advantage of that.
I just want to say to young moms, I am your biggest cheerleader. I remember those days. It's so taxing and hard, but you can do this. You will make it. And we just want to come alongside you and help you in any way we can.
So good, so good. Well, and I love how, we talk about building these little foundational principles. And I know, Alicia, you said, it's amazing how much it just continues to carry on, because you're kind of in that unique situation, and I'm sure many of you can relate, but where you're still kind of in this toddlery phase, especially when it's the fourth, right? Since it takes them a little bit longer sometimes to get out of the being pampered, all the way up to your son who's 16 now, right? And so you're having to really adjust, I'm sure, per kid, how that looks. But I know you just talked about how just that consistency has allowed you to establish such a unique relationship with each one. So just kind of talk to us a little bit about how that looks for you.
We are incredibly blessed because we've homeschooled, and so I think just the quantity of time that we get to spend together allows us to just build those relationships.
Sure.
So for me, that has been my favorite part, is just I feel like I get to know each of my kids really well. And
you're a special woman. Can I just say that? 24/7.
Right.
We are so blessed. Some women wouldn't be so that way. So I love that.
I don't want to paint the picture that it's perfect. But I am grateful for the time with them and the relationships that we've built, me with them and them with each other. And just how critical that is in being able to get to the bottom of something, like when something's off. I feel like I can tell really quickly when something's off. And the cool thing as they get older is that they can tell when something's off with me, and they are sensitive to that. I just think that's such a beautiful way that we as parents get to train them up to be in relationship with other people, and to just love like Jesus, that their senses are up for that. So, but when they're, I have a 10-year-old, actually he turned 11 today. And so one day we were doing school. We always do math, everybody at the table or wherever they go off to do it. And he had taken his brother's pencil to do math with, and the older brother wanted it back. And it just turned into this kind of dramatic situation that doesn't happen a lot and isn't very in character with him. And so I just felt like my senses were heightened to, this isn't just about a pencil. So I was so thankful that the Lord led me to kind of reach out to Charlie and say, hey, let's go take some time and talk about this. What's the deal? Because this is just a pencil. We homeschool. We have a lot of pencils. And so we started talking about it. And the bulk of it is that Grandpa had given this special mechanical pencil to the oldest brother. And so as we started digging into it, he just felt like the oldest always gets the special gifts from grandparents, or as the third son, he's the third of 3 boys. He gets a lot of hand-me-downs
going on for him, isn't there?
Which I'm grateful for, but at the same time, from his perspective, I'm sure it really does feel like that. And so it took a lot of questioning and a lot of patience and a lot of not just accepting, because when we started it was, Charlie, what's going on? Nothing. So I think just as a parent, taking the time, especially if this is new, the building the relationship, that, you have to be the mature one to just stay in it, ask the Lord for guidance, just, even what questions to ask.
It's like his heart was more important to you than his behavior.
Right.
At that point, right?
Yes.
Behavior's important.
Yes.
But the heart, right?
Right.
You cared about what was going on underneath.
Yeah, there's something out of character happening.
Knowing that, when you have established that, you are so aware. And I always think, a mother's instinct is so real, right? God gave us that for such a reason. And I feel like little things like that, it's there are times my kids act up and I'm furious. And I'm not getting this heightened sense of, their poor heart, right? But then there are those times, and it's just taking the time, stopping to really honor them in those moments. And man, you just kind of, I want you to finish the story to hear the reward of taking, this is one of my favorites.
Yeah,
it's just so relatable.
So it took a while. I bet it was probably a 10 or 15 minute process. And I was thankful we had the time to do it at that time. Sometimes you can't do it right then, but we were able to. And so we were able to go shopping for his very own mechanical pencil. And he was thrilled. And I have a great picture with this giant grin of him with the mechanical pencil.
Yes, it really is.
And even today I was asking his permission to share the story. And when I brought up the mechanical pencil, it was the big grin again. You know, like it just represents to him now that he's seen.
Yes, that pencil. So simple.
Yes.
Right? It didn't cost you hours. It didn't cost you dollars, right? My
Right.
kids can get in this, like, let's spend time with mommy. And as they get older, it's getting costly, right? But it doesn't have to be, right? Those
Yes.
really, really meaningful moments are when we
Right.
stop and we are chasing after that relationship and chasing
Yes.
after their heart.
Yes.
And it can just be so simple to just honor them in that. And so I love that. I love that. Especially, you know, your oldest three are boys, correct?
Yes.
And then little Savannah. And so, you know, I have two older girls, and I love that they're both girls because
Right.
there's so many things they relate to and do the same, and we reap the benefits of some hand-me-downs. And
Yes.
but sometimes I think it is hard then to really specifically get at their hearts because it's really easy to do everything in three, like to lump them together. You know, even down to having friends over. I'm like, well, then you have to include your sister, or you know, and it's like, no. Let me just honor, you know, figure out a way to honor them separately and individually, because that can get hard. Because it's a lot easier to just have a date with mommy, the three of us, because
foster that relationship between them too.
Yes, that's
you know,
so
the
true.
sibling relationship, so that they want the best for their siblings too.
Yes.
Like that's something to really work on.
No, that's so good. That's so good. Well, and another thing that you shared with us that I love is I remember asking you, like, day in and day out in the madness and chaos, because I think we can all relate to that, right? Whether we work in or out of the home, when our kids are all home and all present, whether it's just dinner time or it's all day because you're homeschooling, it's just chaos, right? And there's times that chaos can amp up to turn to anger. There's time that chaos can turn into silence. But I love that, you know, what is it for you in those crazy moments that you're just kind of your go-to to, you know, to kind of settle yourself?
So my very favorite thing, I mean, you could do this if you didn't homeschool, but our favorite thing as a family are family read aloud stories. Just whatever it is, it like helps build the culture. And I refuse to believe the lie that any of my children will ever be too old for that. Because we all enjoy it. You know, we all enjoy being read to. And so in super sad moments or stressful, or if I wake up and I can just sense it in the atmosphere, like everybody's just off a little, we just try to stop and read, like together, like a chapter. It kind of resets.
Yes.
And so I just think it helps us have this shared story that we're experiencing together. And so that's just my favorite. I think years from now, when I'm a grandma, like I hope that that's what my kids remember, is that all these stories that we've shared.
That's great. That's great. That's so good, right? Just to kind of have that, because you do just have those days that you're like, wake up going, Mayday, abort. Can I please go back to bed? Because this is not going to go well, right?
And let's be honest, like 80% of the time it's for me.
Yes, right?
I need the reset.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I know, Kim, as we kind of talk about what this looks like, so for you, you know, you wake up with this abort feeling, and, you know, it's just you, right? Like that, I just am so, my heart is so sensitive to those of you that navigate this parenting journey, this mothering journey alone, right? Because, you know, I kind of have my husband to checks and balance me sometimes, hopefully. Sometimes we check each other and then it's full on madness. But I know that you and I relate to that kind of our go-to in our home is just to be squirrely and funny and to like make light of life. Like, don't let this get so serious. And so talk about how you just kind of, you just live this out. And I love that about you.
Yeah. And I want to point out that like you can have that, like the joy and the sorrow, you know, like the crazy, the hard, but also laugh. Like you have two hands, you can hold them both,
That's
right?
so good. And just to remind everybody watching, like you're gonna talk a little bit about your story, but that joy and sorrow piece, like the parenting through the trauma, it can almost feel like you're doing something wrong if you're supposed to be sad, right? But yet it's not healthy to not feel the sadness. And so that will register even more as we go, but it's just so important to understand that. But so talk about that.
Well, so I love nothing more than to create family mottos. We have so many, like it's just something I love doing. And so when my kids were little, and I laugh at inappropriate timing. Like like
when
my
your kids
would,
were little, you still laugh at inappropriate times, Kim. Let's be real. It's why I love you.
And so our motto then was, once it's funny, twice it's a spanking. And they knew,
That's
we
good.
need business, right? Like rarely did I have to spank them. And then, as they got older, we moved to Europe and we became quite the traveling family. And some of those vacations were great, but one night in the middle of a dark alley in the Czech Republic, while we were looking for our hotel, we came up with a family motto of, it'll either be fun now or funny later.
This isn't so fun, but it's gonna be funny.
It was funny later, guys.
That is great.
But yes, actually about 5 years ago, my parenting drastically changed. I suddenly lost my husband to brain cancer. I went from having a co-parent, someone to back me, someone who could offer a rational mindset when I was maybe a little more emotionally charged, right? To just being me. As the outside world sees it, like, I'm not just a single parent. I don't have, there's no other, my kids don't go to their dads. It's just me. I'm an only parent. And so I love the verse, and there's a verse in Psalms 68:5 that says that the Lord is a father to the fatherless and a defender of widows. And like, that's my verse, like for my stage of parenting, that I've just etched in my heart, right? So like, as I'm getting mad at the kids and they're saying life's not fair, I know that the Lord is defending me, right? Like, my husband's not here to do that, but the Lord is.
Yeah.
And as I'm sitting here thinking like, oh my gosh, like, I am not a dad, like, I know that he is a father to the fatherless, right? And so I just encourage, anybody listening who's going through any like frustrating, hard parenting thing, to find that verse not this verse, but whatever verse it is, and etch that on your heart. And just know that to be truth and comfort, and just so that you don't doubt yourself and you don't doubt the Lord, because it's truth, right?
Yes. So good.
So as we,
So now your husband's passed and you're...
Right.
How old were your kids then when your husband passed?
So they were 9, 11, and 23.
Okay.
But, we went from this, like, looking on this side of it, picture perfect life, right?
Yes.
Like, my kids were thriving academically. My husband had a successful career, it was like, we always had a clean house, everything was great. And then I ended up living in my parents' basement. Thank you, parents, for 4 months while looking for a house. And it was then where we adopted our other motto of, it's actually Joe Madden's rally cry for the 2016 Cubs of try not to suck. So we went from our bar being really high right here
I mean,
to...
I'm just going to say, as a Cardinal fan, you've done a lot better than your Cubs. I'm just going to put that out there.
Well, we won the World Series that year, but it's okay.
Yeah, that's great.
So that year, we implemented grief days. And so if the kids would wake up feeling off, I would just call them into school. They would pick where they wanted to eat breakfast, and we would go. And I established right away that a grief day was not an escape day. We weren't just numbing out, avoiding life, but there was going to be some healing going on. And so I would always ask them questions, what is it that makes today hard? I always wanted them to know that, that this feeling is okay. I miss Daddy too. And also, I always wanted them to leave that table knowing that they were loved,
So good.
So no matter what we were doing, like, I know I had to sacrifice a lot, right? Like, that intentional parenting, it requires, you to put the phone down. It requires you to cancel plans. But the reward for it is enormous.
So important.
Man,
so
I am
important.
fascinated by that whole concept that you came up with, to give your children a place to grieve. And but it's so intentional, like you said, it wasn't just a day off. Like, such wisdom in that for a young woman. Wow, that's awesome.
you know, people say like, oh, time heals all wounds, but that's not true, right? Like if I would just let them numb out.
No matter what the we're healing from, right? Like, obviously for our children, this is one of the greatest traumas they can experience, right? But even for people who are navigating divorce or, you know, whatever it may be in their home, right? Just giving them that permission and that space to grieve and encouraging them to do so, right?
Yeah.
It's just so important.
I mean, even like, you know, a few months ago, my daughter called me in the middle of the day and was like, hey, Mom, pick me up. I mean, it was one of those like little T traumas, you know, it was like rejection by a friend. And like, same thing though, you know, like the deal is the deal. Like I drop what I'm doing, I go grab her and we talk, you know, and honestly, she just needed 30 minutes of just a reset.
Yes.
And,
oh, that's so powerful, Kim. Yeah. That's so powerful.
Like I think all of our kids need to know that they matter more than math, you know?
100%.
That
so do all the teachers know who you are?
Oh, I doubt it. I mean, I'm sure they do.
Here she comes.
Another grief day.
I know, I'm sure that the receptionist is like, oh, yeah, okay. But that's okay.
But you know what I love about that is that it's easy as a mom, right? To be like, oh my gosh, I'm that mom. Like, and to think that the receptionist is going to judge us, right?
I don't care.
But it's like, no, you reach such a point of honoring your children and establishing such a strong relationship for them that it makes it easy to not care, right? And I think that that's where it is. It's like, it's just such an issue of just our focus. If our focus is the relationship, right, then it just kind of lets other things fall into place where they need to be. And so I just love that just kind of, you know, honoring your kids beyond that. It's almost become a joke for you. Like, I don't care, right? But probably 5 years ago, you would have cared what the secretary thought about how your house was being run, right? And so it's just so good, so good. But
the other thing that there's two other things that I've really tried hard, and that is to teach my kids to communicate, you know, that whole grief day. But as my son gets older, and I'm sharing this with his permission, he has no desire to really communicate about the hard stuff, right? And so he was going through a hard thing this fall, and we came up with this thing where he allowed me 5 questions a day, 5 obnoxious questions. If it was obnoxious, he would put the finger down, right? But it was really important for me to know, for him to know then that I cared.
Yes.
It taught me that I had to be careful and just be conscious of what I was saying. I want to know everything, don't we all, right?
Right.
But it's just those important things.
Like everything, by the way.
Everything.
Everything. So hard as a mom.
Right. But I needed to know more that his heart was okay than that they were out of meatballs that day with the spaghetti, on the spaghetti at school, you know?
Right.
And so, it also taught him, though, that he can't brush all those feelings under the rug. They don't just magically disappear.
Right.
My therapist told me, you know, at the very beginning of our journey here, about, you know, all of these F's, right? So you have to be able to face your problem, to be able to feel your problem, to be able to forgive, you know, usually forgiveness is our secret sauce, right? Like that's really how the Lord makes everything, right?
Yes.
To be able to have freedom from it.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah.
And then the last thing is just being honest with your kids and telling them age-appropriate truths. When someone's had trauma, dealing with grief, and really probably just everyday life, I find it so important to foster a safe environment that truth has to be told. And so just a quick example, you know, my dad had a heart attack and I didn't tell them, hey, Grandpa's gonna be okay, because I didn't know that to be true. I didn't know. And so I just, you know, told them the facts. When we prayed for healing for Grandpa, you know, and we prayed for their hearts and my heart and for, you know, like energy to get through the day. And that's how we deal with that. Like, there's no...
And Grandpa is okay.
Grandpa is great. We love Grandpa.
Yes, no, that's awesome. And it's out of such a soft place in our heart that we don't want to be honest with our kids so often. But now that I have teenagers, it's like I don't want to have to tell them the truth, right? Like I don't want to like really crack this little innocent shell and talk to them about the truths, but I'm doing them no like favors, right? It's such a disservice to not really speak truthfully into them. And so I love that because it's just so applicable for all of us, right? And something I so easily can find myself doing, just kind of sugarcoating something. And now, maybe I don't want to feel it right then, right?
Yeah.
But putting their need and importance of feeling it before mine.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, too, it
so
keeps
important.
the trust factor with your relationship intact.
Yeah.
Because if you say Grandpa's going to be okay, and then he dies,
Then I have zero
then,
integrity there.
Then next time you say something's going to be okay, they're going to wonder. But when you're honest with them in the hard place, you're teaching them about life. You're teaching them, wow, there's a lot going on there, right?
Our words matter so much.
It does.
They do.
It really does.
They do.
I just want to say you are training up an awesome future husband and your son. Can you imagine these skills in communicating and knowing that you need to? I love that.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So good.
Is he going to do that with his wife? Okay, that's 4. 3.
Tell her.
I'll let her in on my little secret.
Yeah,
Sometimes if I make him a cup of coffee, he'll let me have another question. So
There's another question.
there's ways. There's ways.
It's negotiable.
If I make him coffee, he gives me another. I love that. Well, I love that you just kind of pointed that whole truth thing out, because I know you talked to us about now that you're parenting adult kids, right? And one of who's married with 3 kids of her own, how thankful you are that you had kind of established that foundation of just being truthful and honest with each other, about other people, about each other. And I love how, as you were navigating with your daughter, Jessica, and just being a grandparent, talk to us about how those conversations went, because I think that as a daughter, I can kind of fear upsetting my mom, but again, with our kids, right? It's not doing our relationship any good for me to not be honest, right? And luckily, my mom and I have kind of created that truthful thing too. But talk about how that's kind of playing out as a grandparent, especially.
Yeah, it's interesting because you parent your own kids, and then this other crop comes along, and you're like, oh, I wonder how they're going to do that. And they don't do it exactly the same, right?
Sure.
They just don't. And so there's stuff that you have to navigate. And I mean, when you're a parent, you usually, nobody's a perfect parent, right? So I always call it you either over-parent or you under-parent. And Dave and I, he's a therapist, I'm a parent trainer. We over-parented, all right? There were a lot of things that we probably just should have let go, and our kids make fun of it. Now it's we come from the therapy home. We had to talk about everything, And they were girls, so at least they would talk. But we did try and teach them how to have conversations when there was conflict, when there was sadness, when there was, similar to you, except I wish I'd had you. You have some good ideas.
Right? So
This is why we do this, right? To help each other. But anyway, as it really has paid off, because as they've gotten older, I found out when they grow up, and you guys will too, they hid things from us. Are you kidding? I found out about all the candy that was under the bed, and they'd go and eat their stash when I wasn't looking, because just silly things like that, or the times when a certain daughter that I won't name snuck out of the house and was out with her boyfriend, and I didn't know, and all these little whatever, right? There's always going to be that stuff. So we certainly didn't parent perfectly. But as you have the conversation, even when they're bumpy and they're not perfect conversations, they're learning how to do that, because conversation and relationship is a little uncomfortable sometimes. So when they got to be adults and they would start coming home, Jessica and Zach have these 3 precious little grandsons. And, we had all girls, then we have all boys. So when they come home, it was to visit. They would stay for several days. And Dave and I had no idea how exhausting it would be when you're not in your 20s or 30s anymore, but when you're in your 50s and 60s, it's a whole different ballgame with these little boys who are wrestling you on the floor.
And
so much fun.
Boys opposed to raising girls.
Yes.
Because there's a difference.
Yeah, forget the tea party. They're not interested, right? So when they would leave, we'd be like, okay, we need 2 or 3 days of recoup. We just were like, oh, it was wonderful, blah. And so we started having to have these conversations, and it became a joke. Jessica would call and say, okay, how long are we allowed to stay for this time? And we just had open conversation. We told them, we love when you come, but we're really tired when you leave. And so we have to talk how to, and she even said, well, tell me how we can make it work better. So we talked about how they can help and things they can do that will make it less stressful on us when they're all in our house together. And I mean, it was it's really amazing that we have those conversations
now.
now.
I think that's phenomenal because we shy away from that truth speaking so much, trying to protect each other. And all it does is just let things build, right? And so whether that's with our children, as young as they are, or even grown, right? I love that you can just say, I can't handle all those days, right? And the result of that is that now you're all in when they're there, right?
Yes.
They are getting the best of you because you were willing to have this truthful conversation and put some boundaries around that. And that goes both ways.
And they're not feeling this subliminal, are they wanting us to leave now? Are we still welcome here? They know we'll say it.
They do.
And it takes the pressure off.
Yes. Well, and, you know, I think that, first of all, can I just honor you grandparents out there? Because what a gift you are to just us, right? There are so many grandparents in my life, real and just the ones that God's put in my way, that I just get to glean so much from, and my kids get to glean so much from, right? Just, I don't know, something just happens, right? When you become a grandma, that love just suddenly oozes out of you over all children. And so thank you, grandmas, for just that tough job. Because I think sometimes, you know, it's tough for grandmas to put boundaries around some of those things, right? And to just be able to not feel like their role is to just be available 24/7 and for all these needs, right? But the flip side of that is for some of us, that can feel very overbearing, right? When grandma wants to be there so much as the mom, or when, you know, grandma shows up and suddenly the rules I've established are no longer present and we eat ice cream every night before bed. Like 1 or 2 times that's special and you want that for your kids. But 5 nights in a row, it takes me a month to undo grandma and her way of loving, right? And so it just, again, it's just that truthful conversation, right? Having the permission as the mom to just say, hey, I need you to support me in this. Or having the position as the grandma to say, hey, I can't handle quite all of this. And now, again, we're back to everyone getting the best of each other, which is just so important as we build relationships, right? And so...
Yeah, I mean, we had to talk about discipline when they were at our house. Like if one of my grandsons talks to me a certain way that's not okay with me, I would just say, how do you want me to handle that?
Oh, that's so good.
And so then
so honoring.
I didn't just tell them this is what I'm going to do, because I want to honor the way they're parenting, and it's not the same way exactly I parent, but I want to honor them. Yes. And so we've worked things out together, and they've given me an amazing amount of freedom to do it the way I would like to. But I like to think that's because they can see that I care about their kids and that I care about the way they do things too.
Yeah, no, I think that's so good. So good. And you know, I could go on for days, girls. We just do this like several days in a row. We'll pick a new hot topic and go after it. But for the sake of time, I would love for you, Bobby, just as you are on the other side of parenting and now as a grandma looking back, what is it that you would kind of say to those of us journeying on this mom journey? Trying to get relationally right, and it's difficult and it's tiring, it's hard. Like what's your piece of advice or one thing you want to leave all of us thinking about today? I know there's
so
like
many
8
things run
Nothing
through your mind,
right away. But.
I mean, this sounds so cliche, but it all comes down to love. You know, like when you look back, you're not going to care how neat your house was, right, Kim? You don't care anymore. When you care a little. You care a little. I like a clean house. But you know what I mean? It's like the fingerprints on the wall. It's the old thing. You can get so upset because you're so taxed and stressed when you're raising children, or the bad grade on the report card, or the girlfriend they drug home, or the boyfriend, or whatever. But in the long run, what really matters is that investment in your kid, in listening to them intently, in asking the questions, in like you guys are all doing such a great job with your kids, and I know you are too, even though you haven't said so much. But that investment in the relationship is what really matters and what will pay off. And love covers a multitude of sins. I love that verse.
Me too.
Because I made so many mess ups. I mean, through confessions, I swore at my daughter a couple times at least when I'm telling you, were no other words.
Yes.
And then you immediately feel the shame.
Yes.
I'm a good Christian woman. How can I do this? But you know what? Like, we joke about that now. But I think it's because the foundation of love was there. My anger wasn't the overarching thing she felt. Right. The love was. And so you can make a lot of mistakes. You can be the imperfect parent. And if you're loving your kids and you're loving your grandkids, that's when my grandkids are so fun because it's not up to me how they turn out, that's your job.
Yes. Yes.
But just love well
and
squeeze the moments
That's
out
so
of
good.
the time when you get, because they're only 3 years old once.
I know.
They're only 6.
It feels like it won't ever end.
Teeth.
At each
It
season,
does.
each season just keeps feeling like it won't end, but then you blink.
And
And it's
teenagers
ended,
becoming who they are, watching their personalities develop, right? And their interests and their hobbies. And it's all so interesting. And then really in a blink, you'll hear it's over.
It is.
Like 20 years goes by really fast when you're my age. And in 20 years, I might be dead. Like, right? No, but that's life, right?
That's funny.
It just goes fast.
No, it is. It is.
So squeeze the moment of
that's so true.
love them well,
That's so
enjoy
true.
them.
I know my mom said, I wish I could have just a little taste of what being a grandma would feel like when you guys were little, because it is so easy to just let love win. Like you've released a little bit of that pressure to make sure they turn out and fit in this box that we think they're supposed to fit in. And she's like, it's just so much easier to just take a deep breath. We can't let bad behavior go all the time, right? But I'm like, oh, that's so good. So I sometimes try to think like, okay, I'm grandma. I'm gonna let myself love first here. And then I'm gonna deal with this, because really I just wanna be angry, so.
And give yourself grace.
Yes,
right?
Exactly,
give yourself grace.
Exactly. Well, I just so appreciate and value the three of you and what you guys all bring to this mothering journey. And I love that we get to do it together, right? Like just in the time that we've been able to sit and share together and kind of brainstorm, like I've put so many things into practice, right? And it's like, gosh, I just hadn't stopped and thought about it that way. And so I'm so thankful that all of you took the time today just to kind of tune in, and good for you for taking the time to just grow yourself as a mom. It's not selfish for us to take those moments to better ourselves long enough to be able to pour that back into our kids. And so good on you for joining us. Know that we are championing each and every one of you as moms, and know that we are right in it all with you together. Thanks so much.